Cigar box guitars are one of the most popular hobbies in the guitar playing world and have a rich history going well back into the 19th century. This video is about a basic approach to building a cigar box guitar for those who are interested and looking for a place to start. Hi, and thanks for joining me again on another Great Pickers channel. A few years back I stumbled into the world of cigar box guitar quite by accident. So this video is here to talk to you a little bit about how it came onto my radar screen, how I went about to build a basic cigar box guitar, and how you might, with modest skills and modest tools, build one yourself if you're interested in. Also, you'll see I've added a few links in the description in case you'd like to explore this diverse world of cigar box guitars at a greater level. So one day I came home from work and my wife was excited to tell me about a feature she had seen on PBS about cigar box guitars, and it got me interested. It got me remembering my first thought of a cigar box guitar, which went back to Bo Diddley when I was a small child, one of the pioneers of rhythm and blues melding in with rock. And hey, Bo Diddley, Bo played a cigar box guitar as well. I had already been thinking about building my own custom electric guitar, and it seemed to me like if I would approach building a cigar box guitar, it might be a good way to get my feet wet, and that proved to be true. Now, a lot of folks put a lot of time, effort, and creativity in cigar box guitars, and I've seen some wonderful works of art. It's certainly at least works of folk art. I'll show you a few pictures of those here. My goals, however, were a little bit different. I wanted to do something that was simple, something that was cheap, something that produced something useful out the other end, and just to have some fun. So that's where I was headed. So obviously one of the places you need to start is with a cigar box. Now those of you who have skills, I'm sure could go about building one of your own, but I did what most folks do, and I went and I sourced out some cigar boxes. Actually, I found a lot of guitar boxes. I think there were 6 of them in the lot on eBay for a really modest price. I think it was 15 bucks at the time. I just checked a few days ago before recording this video, and for 20 bucks plus some shipping you can get a lot of cigar boxes still. So I found a lot that had 6, and it did have one that I thought would be ideal for the body, which was this box here in this guitar. I'll show you a pre-built picture of it right here. And with the other boxes, I thought I could put them to good use as well, so I dedicated one box to a guitar maintenance box with my tools, my string changing items, and those sort of things. I dedicated another box to spare tubes for my tube amplifier, and I even got the idea about potentially an amplifier built in a cigar box. But more about that later. Now, wanting to keep things simple and relatively inexpensive, it occurred to me I could probably score a relatively inexpensive knockoff Strat or Tele at a pawn shop and use it to source out a lot of my parts. And that's exactly what ended up happening. Here's a picture of the Tele broken down after I bought it. I was particularly interested in keeping a 6-string neck. Now, many, if not most of the folks who build cigar box guitars will use 3 or 4-string necks and use them for blues, bottleneck slide, and that kind of thing. But I wanted a guitar that I could continue to play the chords or develop my playing on the chords and the scales that I was used to playing. So a cheap knockoff Strat. So now with the parts that I needed in hand, it was time to puzzle out how the build was going to come together. One of the first things that concerned me was string tension and how I was going to fasten this neck to this cigar box and cope with that sort of tension. And it occurred to me that I might use the same technique that are used on semi-hollow guitars, which is to use a block inside the body of the guitar. You see a little shot of it here. I'll show you a still picture or two of it as well. And that would lock down the scale length, and it would also hold all the tension of the strings that I needed it to do. So that was going to be the genesis of my build, was to use a center block inside the guitar box. So once I had the center block in hand, it sort of locked down where all my notches need to be. I still had a little bit of wiggle room where I could put the jack plate, where I could make a control plate if I wanted to. So I began to start making the notches. Now, a word about notching this, it's really basically very simple. You need a few tools. You probably need a drill and a few drill bits. I use hole saws to make some of the round cuts. You probably will need a handsaw to make some of the long cuts, or if you've got a power tool that works as well, that's wonderful as well. And then a file or some sandpaper to sort of smooth up the edges. But that being said, here's a look at the notches that I made to prepare to assemble the guitar. I had a piece of plexiglass around which I thought I could use to make a control plate. So what I did was I just cut it to size, put the holes in it for the pots and the switches, and then painted it gold so that the color would complement or match the gold that was in the label on the top of the guitar box. So now it's just a matter of assembling things. So the first thing I did was to put the control plate and fasten it to the top. The next thing I did was to put the pickups and fasten them to the top, and then from the inside I took care of all my wiring. Now, just a word about wiring. Wiring is a whole separate issue. It can be very complex, but just to keep things simple, if you take the approach I did, you should possibly be able to just use the wiring that came in the guitar that you parted out. Otherwise, it's real simple to find relatively cheaply the wires, the soldering iron, the solder, and any other parts you might need at a Home Depot or even on Amazon. And then the last thing I did was to bolt the neck up to the center block. So at that point we were basically done. All the parts were installed, the scale length was right, and it's time to play. So I thought I might give you a little example of what this sounds like. Okay, so I've got the Cigar Box guitar plugged into a 15-watt tube amplifier, and just thought we ought to keep in mind what we've got here are most likely the cheapest ceramic pickups and the cheapest potentiometers and switches that you could come across, given that it was just a cheap knockoff guitar. So with those things in mind, let's see what it sounds like. Okie dokie. So that about does it for a basic approach to building a Cigar Box guitar. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe it's even given you some ideas about how to get started building a guitar of your own. As I mentioned earlier in the video, one of the things I wanted to do with this project was to get my feet wet to a more serious guitar build. And I did move on and build a custom Strat, which you'll see a little picture of here. I'm going to be working on a video for how that build went. It'll be a lot longer and probably a lot more involved around parts and considerations and that kind of thing. So keep an eye out for that if that interests you. Also, if you're at all interested in basic idea of a Cigar Box amplifier, just let this video keep running. I got a little short piece at the end of it here. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. I enjoyed making this for you. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Please feel free to give me your comments, ideas, suggestions, and until next time, thanks for watching. For those of you still with me and interested in an amplifier made from a Cigar Box, here's a basic look at how I did one. You can see as we look inside, there's a really small amp circuit board in there. In fact, it's just about the smallest thing of the whole build here. That amp section only put out, I think it was 2 watts. It was quite a few years ago. If you look on eBay or Amazon these days, you can find for 10 or 15 bucks little amplifier circuit boards that put out 10 watts per channel. At any rate, this one's powered by a 9-volt amplifier, as you can see, and the speakers were just stolen from an old tabletop radio. So while it's nothing to write home about, it gets the job done, and maybe it'll give you some ideas. Let me know. Thanks a bunch.